Korea Real Estate Explained. Episode 4. LTV, DTI, DSR. Korea's mortgage lending ratios and how they shape the entire property market. In Korea, the government directly controls how much banks can lend for property. Not through vague guidance, through hard caps published by the Financial Services Commission. LTV, DTI, and DSR are those caps. When these ratios tighten, transaction volumes fall. When they loosen, markets heat up. These three acronyms are the throttle on Korea's property cycle. Understanding them is not optional for anyone buying, selling, or investing in Korean real estate. 3 ratios. Each one measures something different. LTV, loan to value, or Dambo Injongbyul. This caps how large your loan can be relative to the property's value. DTI, debt to income, or Chongbuche Sangwanbyul. This caps your annual debt repayments relative to your income. DSR, debt service ratio, or Chongbuche Weoligum Sangwanbyul. This is stricter than DTI. It counts every loan you have, not just the mortgage. You must pass all 3 simultaneously. The binding constraint is whichever cap produces the smaller loan. LTV, loan to value. The most visible constraint. The formula, loan amount divided by property value multiplied by 100. 3 tiers as of 2025. Speculative zones, Tugijeog, Gangnam, Seocho, Songpa, and Yongsan only. LTV capped at 40%, the tightest restriction in the system, often effectively less for high-priced units. Speculative overheated zones, Tugigwayoljigu, now covers all 25 Seoul districts plus 12 Gyeonggi areas following the October 2025 policy. LTV capped at 50%. On top of the LTV percentage, maximum loan amount caps apply. 6 billion won for homes priced under 1.5 billion, 4 billion for homes between 1.5 and 2.5 billion, and 2 billion for homes above 2.5 billion. Non-regulated areas, LTV 70 to 80%. Most regional cities fall here. DTI, debt to income. How income caps your total mortgage repayment. The formula, annual principal plus interest on all loans divided by annual income. DTI is capped at 40 to 50% in regulated zones, up to 60% in non-regulated areas. Here's a practical example. Annual income of 50 million won, 40% DTI cap. Maximum annual debt repayment, 20 million won per year. On a 30-year mortgage at 4%, that translates to a maximum loan of roughly 343 million won. Note what DTI doesn't include. Unlike DSR, DTI only counts the mortgage you're applying for, not your other existing loans. That's why DSR is stricter, and why it matters more. DSR, debt service ratio. The strictest cap, every loan counts. The formula, all annual loan repayments, principal plus interest, divided by annual income. Unlike DTI, DSR includes every loan, credit cards, car loans, personal loans, student debt. The base DSR cap is 40%. But since July 2025, Stress DSR, 3 Dangi, adds a stress rate on top when calculating your limit. For metro and regulated zone mortgages, that's an additional 3% stress rate, raised from 1.5% by the October 2025 policy. For regional mortgages, the stress rate is 0.75%, with a grace period until June 2026. In practice, the stress rate doesn't change your actual loan rate. It reduces how much loan qualifies under the 40% cap, meaning the same income now supports a smaller loan than before. One more change from October 2025. Homeowners who take out Jont's loans in metro and regulated zones now have that Jont's loan interest counted in their DSR calculation. Let's put it all together with a real example. You're buying a 900 million won apartment in a speculative overheated zone. That's a Tugigwayoljigu, which now covers all of Seoul. Annual income, 70 million won. Existing car loan, 6 million won per year. LTV at 50%. Maximum loan is 450 million won. Passes. DTI at 40%, 70 million times 40% equals 28 million won per year. Max loan roughly 481 million. Passes on DTI alone. DSR at 40%, same 28 million cap, minus the 6 million car loan leaves 22 million available. That caps the loan at roughly 379 million. Then apply stress DSR at plus 3%. The same 22 million annual allowance now supports an even smaller loan, roughly 310 million. The binding constraint is stress DSR at 310 million. Same apartment, same income. But stress DSR is now the number that limits you. These ratios are a policy tool, not fixed rules. When the government tightens, reducing LTV from 70 to 40% or adding stress rate on DSR, fewer buyers qualify for large loans. Transaction volumes fall, prices cool. This happened in 2018, 2021, and again in late 2025. When the government loosens, raising LTV caps, expanding first buyer exemptions, or reducing stress rates, more buyers qualify and volumes rise. This happened in 2023 when the market was slowing. The problem with policy cycles: tightening creates its own distortions. When buying is blocked, demand shifts into jaunts. The underlying supply shortage doesn't change. Each intervention creates the conditions for the next one. Special treatment for first-time buyers. The Bogamjari loan, Bogamjariron, is a government-backed fixed-rate mortgage. First-time buyers can access LTV of up to 70% on eligible properties. Income and price caps apply. Administered by Korea Housing Finance Corporation. The Didimdon loan, Didimdoldekal, targets lower-income first-time buyers. LTV up to 70%. Available for properties under 500 million won. And there are special DSR exemptions for first-time buyers in certain income brackets. Policy changes frequently. Always check the current Korea Housing Finance Corporation or Financial Services Commission website before planning a purchase. The rules on these products shift more often than most buyers realize. There's a connection between LTV restrictions and the Johnson system that most people miss. When tight LTV rules blocked buyers in 2018 to 2021, many stayed as renters, often on Johnson. This increased demand for Johnson and pushed up deposit amounts. Landlords, blocked from using mortgages by LTV caps, turned to Johnson deposits as a zero-interest funding source instead. So LTV restrictions didn't eliminate leverage. They redirected it into the Johnson system. When rates rose in 2022 and LTV rules were partially relaxed in 2023, Johnson demand fell as buyers re-entered. Landlords who had borrowed against Johnson suddenly faced tighter conditions. The result was widespread Johnson defaults. LTV policy aimed at cooling purchases had inadvertently fueled the Johnson crisis. Where the tightest rules apply. A summary of current zone designations as of late 2025. Speculative zone, Tugijiog, LTV 40%, DTI 40%, Gangnam, Seocho, Songpa, and Yongsan only. These four have been designated since 2017. Speculative overheated zone, Tugigwaeljigu, which now equals Jojong Desangjiog, LTV 50%, DTI 50%. All 25 Seoul districts plus 12 Gyeonggi areas, including Gwacheon, Gwangmyeong, Songnam-Bundang, Sujong, and Jungwon districts, parts of Suwon, Anyang-Dongan, Yongin-Suji, Uiwang, and Hanam, all designated under the October 2025 policy. Non-regulated areas, LTV 70 to 80%, DTI 60%. Most regional cities, Busan, Daegu, Daejeon, Regional Incheon, Sejong. Zone designations change with every policy cycle. Always verify current FSC status before making any purchase decision. 3 things to take away from this episode. 1. LTV, DTI, and DSR work as a system. You must pass all 3 simultaneously. The binding constraint is whichever cap produces the smaller loan. In the current environment, stress DSR is often the binding constraint in metro areas. 2. Zone designation matters enormously. The same income and the same apartment produce a very different maximum loan depending on which regulated zone it's in. With the October 2025 expansion, all of Seoul now falls under speculative overheated rules. 3. These ratios are a policy tool, not fixed rules. LTV and DSR caps change with every policy cycle. Stress DSR was raised from 1.5 to 3% in a single announcement. The current numbers are the starting point, not the final word. That's episode 4, LTV, DTI, and DSR Explained. Next episode, the Johnson loan crisis. How leveraged Johnson caused the 2022 to 2023 crash and what changed. Subscribe at KRE Official and we'll see you there.